Does it seem like no matter how hard you work, save, and sacrifice, some people seem to be moving much faster than you? Do they know something that you don't? Well, yes, okay? You see, so many people fail at building wealth because they don't understand that there's a sequence to it. There's an order that you have to follow to build good momentum. Even if you hit the right goals, if it's at the wrong time, that building won't last. So in this video, we're walking you through the sequence, the levels of financial goals you need to reach by every age. So let's find out where you are and what you need to hit next. Welcome to Alux, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. At level 1, age 18 to 22, you learn to live below your means here. You're fresh into adulthood, okay? Maybe you're in college or maybe you're working your first job. Money is tight, but you're finally responsible for it for yourself. You're saving 10% of everything that comes in and you're putting it into a high-yield savings account because you want to build up an emergency fund of at least $500 to $1,000. Once your emergency fund is solid, you can start to split new savings. Some can stay in that high-yield account for short-term needs, and the rest can go toward long-term goals like investing. So you have to be tracking every dollar, even if it's painful. Saying no to lifestyle inflation, even when it feels tempting. Building your first basic emergency fund, even if it's just $500. That $500 doesn't sound like much, but when you're broke and your laptop breaks or your rent is due and your job messes up payroll, it becomes everything, okay? It's not about the amount. It's about knowing you've got your own back. At this level, money isn't about status yet. You're not trying to impress anyone, or at least you shouldn't be. Your focus is survival, independence, and learning how to stay in control. But here's the trap, okay? As soon as you start making a little bit of money, just enough to not panic all the time, the urge to show it starts to kick in. New clothes, a better phone, nights out that you almost afford. You start performing success before you've actually built it. This is where most people mess up. They get their first paycheck and instead of building a buffer, they build an image. So you have to be different, okay? You have to be the person who delays the show and builds the system. Because if you can learn to live well below your means at this level, you can make smart choices before life forces you to. You'll be ahead of 90% of people your age. Not just financially, but mentally too, because once you learn to live below your means, everything else gets easier. Now on to level 2, age 22 to 28. Eliminate bad debt and build a financial buffer. At this level, you're earning money. It might not be a lot, but for the first time, it's coming in regularly. You're no longer just trying to make it through the month, which means the focus shifts. This is when you stop reacting to financial problems and start building the foundation that protects you from them. It's also when you're first introduced to financial tools that can either help you grow or quietly wreck your progress. Credit cards, store accounts, payday loans, and overdraft options all start to show up with a friendly face and zero context. And without a solid financial education, it's easy to assume these are harmless or even helpful. You're under pressure to show that you're doing well, and when your paycheck isn't stretching far enough, borrowing can feel like a temporary fix. You tell yourself you'll only use the card for emergencies or just this once. But it rarely ends there. It adds up fast, and it usually hits right when you're trying to feel independent, like you've got some control over your life. Credit cards and short-term loans aren't just expensive, they're exhausting. They drain your energy, your confidence, and your future income. Getting rid of them gives you breathing room. So now your focus is clearing high-interest debt, and you've committed to using at least 20% of your income to do that. You're also contributing to a retirement fund every month, usually about 10% of your income. Now that third thing is just as important and much harder to stick to. You'll still have to follow suit with that lean living you learned in level 1, even as your income grows. That extra money doesn't need to be spent, okay? You don't have to move into a bigger place or buy the newest phone just because you finally can. What you actually need is a buffer, enough to cover 3 to 6 months of living expenses no matter what happens. That buffer is what allows you to leave a job that's making you miserable, take some time off without panic, or handle emergencies without going into debt. It gives you options, and in your 20s, That's the one thing most people don't have. This is the phase where financial goals stop being optional. They're not something to revisit when you feel more grown up. They're the thing that makes adulthood manageable. They are how you protect yourself from bad luck, unstable jobs, and decisions you don't actually want to make but feel forced into. If you build this buffer right now, you'll thank yourself for the next 20 years, okay? And no, this doesn't mean that you can't enjoy your life at the same time. It just means you plan for the enjoyment instead of letting it run you. Have fun, travel, go out, spend money on what matters to you, but also understand that the life you want in your 30s starts with how serious you are in your 20s. So don't waste a whole decade trying to keep up appearances. Use this time to build stability and direction. Once you have those, the next level doesn't just feel possible, it actually becomes reachable. So at level 3, we've got 28 to 35, where you're buying your first property. At this stage, you've built some financial breathing room. You've got an emergency fund that you keep contributing to, and you don't even notice it coming out of your account anymore. You've probably had to utilize it a few times too, and you've seen how useful it can be. Your income is more predictable and you're no longer reacting to random bills like they're a crisis. So you've started investing more aggressively. 15% of your income goes into index funds or ETFs, and 20 to 30% is going into another high-yield savings account because in a few years, that's going to be your deposit for your first property. As you get into your 30s, the idea of buying your first property starts to move from a distant goal to an actual plan. You might still rent, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're ready for more stability and want your monthly payments to start building something for you, not just for your landlord, then buying some property might make sense. And buying your first home is not just about finally settling down. It's your first serious step into long-term ownership of anything. This is how many people build wealth even without passive incomes. But the preparation starts earlier than most people realize. Ideally, you begin planning and saving at least 2 to 3 years before you're ready to buy. During that time, your goal is not just to save for a deposit, you're also preparing your entire financial profile. That means lowering or eliminating high-interest debt. It means building a solid credit score and keeping your credit utilization low. It means showing consistent income over time and avoiding big purchases that might complicate your approval. You need to know how much you can actually afford. Not how much the bank says you qualify for, but what you can comfortably pay without stretching yourself too thin. So use this time to research. Understand how interest rates change your total repayment, explore neighborhoods, and track property prices. The more familiar you are with the market, the less likely you are to make an emotional decision. Your first property doesn't have to be perfect, okay? In fact, it probably won't be. It might be smaller than you expected or hoped for, in a transitional neighborhood, or in need of some repairs. But if it's structurally sound and priced below what you can afford, it's a stepping stone and a good one. You're not just buying a home to live in, you're buying an asset that can grow in value, generate rental income later, or give you equity to work with when life changes. If you're not ready to buy just yet, that's okay too, but now is the time to start preparing so that when the opportunity does come, you're not left scrambling. Saving for a deposit, building a clean credit history, and keeping your lifestyle modest will help you get there faster. The goal isn't just to buy a house. The goal is to buy one from a position of strength, not stress. And if that means waiting a little bit longer or buying a little smaller, that is more than worth it. Because once you've got that first property, you're no longer just surviving or saving, you're building something that belongs to you. And no matter what happens in the world or at work, that is a foundation that nobody can take away. Now, most of us have probably gotten to this point all by ourselves, no problem, right? But if you'd like some help accelerating your financial goals from level 3 onward, well, the Alux app is your shortcut, okay? It's packed with courses, roadmaps, and practical tools, all designed to get you to financial freedom faster than you would otherwise. So if you download the app and scan this QR code on screen, you'll get 25% off the annual membership, and 6 months from now, halfway through that membership, you'll already be operating on a completely different level. We'll see you on the inside. But let's continue on with today's video, shall we? All right, at level 4, that's age 38 to 44, That's when you're getting your secondary property and investing more aggressively. Because by now, you're financially stable in a way that actually kind of means something here. You can handle life's curveballs without unraveling, and you're starting to see that survival isn't a goal anymore. Now it's about growth, consistency, and long-term control. If you've bought your first property, you already know how much discipline it takes to prepare, save, and commit to a purchase of that size. This time around, you're doing it smarter, and you know that more income speeds everything up, so you decide to take on a temporary freelance or consulting gig. Nothing crazy, just something that gives you a little extra to add to your fund bucket. It's all a part of a bigger financial strategy to expand your assets and increase your income through ownership. Maybe it's a rental unit that brings in consistent monthly cash, or maybe it's a place in a different city where your family could eventually live. Either way, you're not buying on a whim. You're not hoping for appreciation to save the day. You are running the numbers here. You're looking at locations, maintenance costs, and potential returns, and you're only making the move if it strengthens your long-term position. This is also the point where investing should become a habit, not an afterthought. You're not just saving a few $100s when you can. You're systematically investing 15 to 20% of your income every month. And that includes maxing out your retirement contributions, automating transfers to your brokerage account, and tracking the progress of your portfolio at least quarterly. The tools you're using right now are more advanced, and your decisions are backed by more than just hope and enthusiasm. You've probably lived through a few market crashes and corrections by this point, so you've learned how to stay calm, stay invested, and trust the process. You're not chasing the next viral coin or trying to triple your money overnight, no. You're focused on solid funds, consistent returns, and building a portfolio that will pay you whether you're working or not. This is also the stage where your lifestyle starts to reflect your priorities. You're not upgrading because you earn more. You're still spending intentionally, still putting money toward expenses and freedom instead of things you'll get bored of in 6 months. If you've got children, their education and stability factor into your financial planning now. And if you don't, you're probably thinking more seriously about how to build a life that doesn't depend on anyone else's help, income, or approval. The biggest danger here is becoming too comfortable. Saving feels good and security is addictive. But if you're not putting that money to work, you're actually slipping behind. Inflation doesn't wait for anybody, okay? Every year you sit on cash, you lose ground. So you have to stay uncomfortable in a productive way. Keep learning, keep investing, and keep building some income streams that don't need you to clock in. This is your window to build momentum that will carry you into the next chapter of your life with freedom instead of pressure. And if that means saying no to unnecessary upgrades or keeping your circle tight while you focus, that is not a sacrifice. That is discipline. And at this stage, discipline pays more than effort ever will. At level 5, that's age 44 to 55, you're building wealth, not just security. You're earning well by this level. You've made a few financial mistakes in your past, but you've also recovered and learned from them. You've got your emergency fund fully stocked, you've paid off most of your bad debt, and you're contributing consistently to retirement. Now your focus is building wealth that lasts beyond you. You've paid off a large portion of your mortgage, or you're aiming to have your primary home fully paid off within the next 5 to 10 years. You've already bought your first property, and now you're investing in a second one as a rental or asset. You're saving and investing 15 to 20% of your income into diversified assets like index funds, dividend stocks, and real estate. Your money is generating more money. You're no longer chasing status, and you're building a life where you get to say no when you want to. You're focused on paying down your remaining big debts while continuing to invest for long-term cash flow, not just appreciation. The decisions you're making right now are designed to buy you options, like walking away from a job, moving countries, or helping your kids without breaking your bank. And even if retirement is still a decade away, your lifestyle is already moving toward freedom. Work and making money are still a driving force behind your actions. So you're grinding with those multiple income streams, building real estate, tackling any debt you've accumulated. At this level, you want to be able to give yourself the choice of working until you're 65. You don't want it to be something that you absolutely have to do. And by now, you're also at the point where the window to play catch-up is closing fast. This isn't the time to play it small, okay? You can't be keeping too much money in your savings, sticking with one income stream, or being super cautious about your investments when you've got the opportunity to take smart risks. The time to figure out retirement is now. At level 6, age 50 to 60, that's the transition to financial freedom. Now, this is the decade where every decision has weight, because your margin for making mistakes has gotten thinner. All of those accounts you opened and built up over decades are now being fully funded. So make sure you don't miss your contributions or skip over investing months. You'll see that expenses you once thought were normal now seem unnecessary. You don't need to have a 5-bedroom house, a high-end car lease, or those multiple streaming services that never get used. You've realized that simplicity gives you power. It's not just a financial move, it's a mental one too. A simple life gives you less to worry about and less to stress about. At this level, the focus shifts from building toward freedom to living with it in mind every single day. And it doesn't even feel like you're undoing the work that you've built up over decades. It's the opposite. It feels like you're taking another big step forward. You're also over taking on big bets and risks. The goal here is full financial freedom. To have the option to stop working without panic. To say yes or no to something without even needing to check your bank balance. Or to fund a child's education, take a 6-month break, or walk away from a toxic environment without needing to ask permission. This is the last big checkpoint before retirement. For those of you who've been preparing for this, you'll feel lighter, even excited. For those who haven't been, or those who started late, you're probably feeling the pressure by this point. There's no overtime bonus for starting late, and no miracle catch-up plan that makes up for lost decades. But if you start right now, you'll at least have some form of control over where you end up. Then at level 7, age 60 plus, that's where you secure your legacy. Because if everything goes according to plan, this is the stage where you've earned your peace. Your basic needs are working, your investments are working for you, and the financial system you spent decades building is holding steady. But now, a new question starts to shape every decision. What stays behind when you're no longer here? The climb no longer appeals to you. Now you want to make sure that the work you put in can carry through the next generations. This is where you focus on estate planning, setting up trusts, and updating your will. You're looking at how you can structure your assets so they don't become burdens, and how you can pass on assets that would become burdens. Teach your children and grandchildren how the system works. Show them how to make money, protect it, and grow it wisely. This is where impact replaces accumulation. Now, your central focus is on things like funding scholarships, mentoring others, supporting a cause, or starting a foundation. Some projects will live longer than the person funding them, and that's kind of the point here. The biggest threat is believing the work is already done, though. Without clear planning, everything built over decades can disappear in just months. A poorly structured estate and an unprepared family can absolutely risk everything. And since you stuck with us this far, Aluxer, as a bonus, the trap of stopping too early. Now, far too many people get a good momentum going for their financial goals, they reach one or two of the big ones, and then they ease up a little bit. They pay off debt, buy a house, or reach a 6-figure income, and then shift their focus from building to maintaining. But the system isn't complete. You haven't made it yet. You still have to deal with inflation. You'll miss opportunities, and worst of all, your confidence will begin to fade. The emergency fund that once felt full starts looking pretty small. That income that once felt strong now feels stretched. Momentum is powerful, but it only works if it keeps going. So don't slow down just because the first big win is behind you. Use that big win as fuel. Keep investing, learning, earning, and protecting what you've built. So, now that you've seen the financial levels by age, Which level are you at right now? And what's the next financial goal that you need to lock in? Drop a comment with your answer, and if you're serious about climbing even faster, download the Alux app, scan this QR code, and we'll see you on the inside. Until next time, my friend, take care.